This is the art of startup war. And my name is Brian McMahon, your host and sensei. Here is what we know. 98% of startups will fail every single day, and mostly due to reasons outside your control. The Expert Dojo Startup Accelerator, we look to even up the playing field by sitting down with the greatest minds in startup investment, right here in our studio in Silicon Beach, where we look to shine a light on your path to success. Now, our guests each week have invested millions of dollars into startups and are the most respected investors in the world. Now, they share all they know with you, the listener. So join us on Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, starting off your week winning the war against startup failure. Welcome back. It's Tuesday morning. It's 10 o'clock. It's another brilliant podcast. Today I have incredible entrepreneur turned phenomenal investor turned brilliant leader in the Southern California venture capital community turned really good buddy of mine. Welcome, Jenny Kuta.
Well, hey, thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me today and sending love and vibes to your listener. Thank you so much.
Yay. And I'm going to start with a heading from an article. I never start with a heading from an article, but it's a cool article. From Wall Street newbie to millionaire by 27. Serial entrepreneur Jenny Kuta is in a rush. Her destination, another $1 million idea. Speed is her friend, and it's served her well so far. You like that?
I love it.
I just wondered who's going to be in the movie with you. Danny, maybe we got Al Pacino?
Yeah, I have a few, but I empower women, so there's probably going to be a lot more
No, I mean,
badass.
so you can beat him up.
There you go.
Yeah, just
or
to beat
they
them up.
can
No.
beat me up. Doesn't matter. So either way, I'm cool with it as long as there's more women in my movies than that of men. So it's cool.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because, okay, so we're going to talk about investment. We're going to talk about how incredibly you empower entrepreneurs here, how you help with investments and so many other areas. But I find this period of your life to be the most interesting because it's so hard to do what you did. Like, you go into a space, and we talk about women and men there for a second, but Wall Street is the most male-dominated, intimidating space, even if you're a man, I'm sure. And there's got to be so few women in there. And for you to be able to break through, create your own technology, make the amount of money that you made from that space and get through it has to be a phenomenal story. Can you share a little bit of that with us at the start?
Well, certainly. I mean, in terms of stories, I can certainly write several books, which I did write one of them. But there were a lot of stories. There are still stories to this very day. There was a story a couple weeks ago. Again, you're absolutely right that I have always been in the fields of predominantly men, Wall Street, venture capital, tech, Silicon Valley, you name it. I love it because I love the challenge behind it. I would find any other sector that are not challenged to be boring.
Yeah.
So therefore, in terms of story-wise, I mean, there is, a lot. But it all, surround in terms of male egotistical. I recently wrote a small piece and I published it on Medium regarding how I did a quick research of self-made billionaire in terms of women. And the highest that a self-made billionaire has ever gone up to is about $5 billion. And
Right.
she happens to be the co-founder of Little Caesars Pizza.
Yeah, which sounds a lot, but actually it's nothing. It's
Yeah,
nothing in the
it's
great
just little-
scheme of
exactly.
large companies.
Exactly.
It's actually ridiculously small.
Exactly. So I question, why do self-made billionaire women, I mean, there are very rich, wealthy women like ranked number 17 on Forbes, but all of those women, they receive their money by inheritance.
Right.
Okay. But I'm only talking about self-made billionaire, which I would be in that category.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, when you study something, you learn something because that's where you're heading, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt that even Oprah, she's actually number 4 of the self-made billionaires list. So she's only worth $2.9 billion. So I find that a little bit interesting. So then I wrote this piece because at that particular time, something happened to me in real life. And I can't really share what happened, but I can basically say that in the field of predominantly men, the problem is women tend to seek advice from other men, obviously, because when you keep climbing the corporate ladder, you don't see many women.
Right.
Okay. So therefore, you're surrounded by men. But the thing about it is, I question the part that is, could it be that women could not surpass $5 billion net worth is because they take advice from the men that would suppress them instead of opening up more doors for them. Because in terms of human beings, regardless if we are a man or a woman, there will always going to be competition, jealousy, etc., etc.
Sure.
So I feel like the reason why self-made billionaires, men such as Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and stuff like that, when they continue to climb that corporate ladder, they are surrounded by men. And men, I believe, tend to support men, such as even, let's mention President Donald Trump. Certainly, half of the world probably hates him, and there are still certain parts of the world or even people who like him.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't know if Donald Trump were to be a female, if he will get that kind of support still.
I think we know, right?
Yeah,
he
obviously.
Wouldn't, right?
Obviously.
He wouldn't.
So, so then my conclusion would be, in terms of, that situation I had just a couple weeks ago, and it's still fresh. Let's just say fresh wounds, but I wouldn't say it's a wound because I believe I walk away successfully from that. But that story literally is a man suppressing a woman to do what a man believes that it is right.
Yeah.
Okay. But the problem of the matter is, for women out there, if they're listening to this particular podcast, you need to look back. I mean, if you are that woman, if the idea is yours, and if you're the one who's gathering the team, and if you're literally the driving force behind this certain project, why then would you conclude it to allow a man to dictate the rest of the path for you?
Sure.
Okay, so I hope that's a little bit.
Look,
Yeah.
so this was a really interesting path for
Yes.
me. I did the TEDx talk about how I felt that institutional investment was sexist and racist and elitist on many, many areas. And the figures just speak for the figures, right? It's just not even an opinion here. We know that there is tremendous inequality within the ranks. And as I got deeper and deeper into the space, I didn't come across people who were outwardly like that. I just came across a system that facilitated it, right? So it doesn't take bad people for bad stuff to happen. It just takes good people to do nothing and to sit around. So as I then started launching the accelerator here and bringing in companies, I just looked for cage fighters. I looked for brilliant entrepreneurs who could break through. And the really interesting thing for me is that we're now at 60% plus on women entrepreneurs in our equity program. We have the $50,000 checks that we're now giving to entrepreneurs through the new acceleration fund. I expect that to be given. The first 3 companies, 2 of the 3 are both women entrepreneurs. But you know why? Because they kick ass. Like when they step into their own path and they stop listening to people who may not understand the journey that they're on, and they actually go fast forward, they're 3-4 times better than a lot of the other entrepreneurs who come through the door. I actually see it. Like I look on one side of it, I look at the world and I say, it's terribly unjust, it's really unfair, and it shouldn't happen. And on another side, secretly, even though I'm saying it on a podcast, I think this is awesome because it is the most brilliant opportunity in the world for us, because we get these amazing entrepreneurs that we can have a piece in their company, for giving them a little bit of money and be a part of their journey, which we know has got a better chance of success. So I love it.
Totally agree. I mean, a little bit to add into what you've stated is, on Wall Street itself, there have been so many research out there that has proven that women are better investors than men, period. There's no if, ands, or but, okay? Women are more disciplined. Maybe women's intuition are a little bit, reserved, conservative, but yet aggressive. There's a mixture of that in a woman's mind that makes the woman always a little bit better when it comes to making investment decisions. And that is, already out there in terms of research and survey.
It's proven.
Proven.
You know
That
why?
is correct.
First investor in Expert Dojo was a woman.
Okay.
Smartest people in the world.
Exactly. So, but then the thing is, see, women, we still need help from men like yourself. I mean, if there are more men, we call them feminists, etc. Support the women. Of course, that's, I mean, right now, what is the data out there? I believe is anywhere between 2 to 7% in terms of funding money. For every dollar a man gets, women gets only 2 to 7%, which is like nothing.
No.
I mean, I believe we've tried for decades already, the last at least 10 to 20 years, to try to increase this amount, and I still couldn't figure out why it hasn't gone up even more than 10 or 15 or 20 or 30% even. We're still under 10%.
Yeah.
And I sent out a tweet yesterday because I've read, information about Elon Musk, how he, or even Mark Zuckerberg, he put out $100 million for some kind of education program, but it backfired, it didn't do well. Jeff Bezos also did something. This was on the New York Times article I read yesterday. So all of these men, you see, very, very wealthy men, they spend all these, I would call them excess money in areas where it's great, you know. Or Elon Musk, he spent the money, regarding those 12 boys in Thailand, on that submarine thing that's currently all over the news right now. If they only use some of those play money, which are in the billions actually, hundreds of millions,
of course.
and invest in women, and I believe, if what Elon Musk did regarding that little submarine that he built for those 12 boys stuck in the cave in Thailand, if that was a PR stunt, imagine if he used the same amount of money, or Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos using that same amount of money, I call them play money, for this wealthy, men, into women. I believe that PR would be a guaranteed success.
No, they do great. And also they'd make more money. That segues very nicely into, I'm a woman entrepreneur, I'm starting my business, I'm out looking for investment right now today. What do I do? I know I'm in a market where I'm only going to get a 2.7% chance versus a male entrepreneur walking into the same meeting afterwards, which means technically I have to do 30 times more meetings than my male entrepreneurs, which actually is incredibly tough because most of my male compadres have to do 100 meetings to get investment, so I have to do 3,000. What does my journey look like?
Well, in terms of some of the areas that how I would mentor an entrepreneur from,
because we're going to keep this all about women, right?
That is
so this,
correct.
yeah. Because I think it's really, I love the fact that we're very sharply focused in on this. So it's kind of half of it is how to avoid failure, and the other half of it is like how do I go through the fundraising process to be successful. It's this two sides of the same apple.
Well, first of all, women or men, but let's gear toward women, which I believe it's kind of the same. But again, stick with women. Like what you're saying, as a woman startup founder, CEO, she has to hustle probably, 30 or even 50 times more than that of a man. If a man goes to a meeting 10 times, that woman probably have to go to that, similar meetings, investors, funding 30 or 50 times to get at least similar ratio. But before you do all that, obviously, being an innovator, you have to have the product. But at the end of the day, make sure you check the statistic. If you are the founder of a certain product or a startup that the statistic are not really out there. I recently mentored a female founder, wanted to start something, but even I myself could not find any statistic out there. How is it then who's going to give you the check? Because most of the investors...
So when you say statistics, so you can't follow a logical thought process to see which investors would invest in that specific sector, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, a female founder came to me and say, Jenny, I have this great idea. I think there are problems in this sector. And so I wanted to solve that problem, which is good. That's what entrepreneur startup founders do. You're supposed to pick a problem and then you're supposed to solve it. But then when it comes to funding, okay, most investors, VCs, angel investors, when they write that check, they tend to ask for, okay, what is your pro forma? What is your projection? Where is this business going to lead? So if you hop on Google and you Google that, and you literally cannot find any data out there yet, then it's just like one of those episodes on Shark Tank where you will hear Mark Cuban or some of the sharks on Shark Tank. They would say, well, you know what? I think this is a great idea, but I believe it's too new. This is probably, you're the innovator of this sector. So let's give it another 5 to 6 years to see where you're at. And then we would, come in investing at a time. No investor are going to write a check when they too know that you're literally going against the wind or going against like the big waves because you're the first one out there. If you were to be a man, then your chances are higher because out of $1, there are at least 95 cents available to you, and they're willing to take risks of those kind of newly invention that there are no data out there.
So what do women do if they have a new invention? They're breaking into an area of artificial intelligence which hasn't been broken into before. They're a thought leader in the space. How do they find the investors who are actually going to help them?
This would be an interesting mentor advice, but I'm going to teach you how to lie. And how you lie is, even though you are the woman, you founded that sector, you step back and become like, the COO or something. You become the Sheryl Sandberg. You bring a man in to become the CEO of Mark Zuckerberg, because you got to play the game how the game is given.
Yeah,
okay?
Great point.
So the thing about it is, if you believe your innovation or what your ideas are, and that you've sat down with Jenny Ta and she mentored you and she said, you know what, I'm sorry to tell you blunt, but you're not going to get a check for it because you're a female, you're blah, there's no data out there, blah, blah, blah. So if you really still believe in it, then you step back to seat number 2, which is the COO, okay? You bring the gentleman, probably Caucasian, in his 20s, early 30s.
Someone like me.
There you go. Of course, gotta bring in Brian Dojo.
Maybe 20 years ago. What are you going to do with me?
Yeah.
Are you going to send me like children of the corn? Are you going to put me in the fields? I can't come back. Damn, my investment days are over.
The only thing to that is that you have to be extremely cautious with legal paperwork. Because I've also seen stories out there that when a woman does that, she will be stolen. Her company or her business will be stolen by that of that man. Okay? So either you trust that man who's going to come in and take seat number 1, even though everything is yours. Okay? Or you have to find a really good attorney to literally draft whatever it is that between you and that CEO to make sure, even though you're sitting on the number 2 chair, but you're the driving force behind that number 1.
Maybe even as co-founder, like we had recently we had I just had the most brilliant example with ShipC, with Chelsea, who's the founder of the company. And she brought in Ben, and Ben is co-founder. It was his idea originally, and then he brought her in, she ran it, and then she had him on the side, but he was doing his own thing. But because he was an exited entrepreneur before, because he had run an accelerator over in the UK, he was really well respected by the venture community. Her opportunities of raising investment went through the roof because she had him alongside. Now, she still did all of the pitching herself at the beginning, but she would then bring him in on the pitch, and then he would talk in the areas that he knew the VCs would, in inverted commas, understand, right? The end result is they raised 1.5. They oversubscribed their round by like $1 million. They killed it on the round. But she did a similar thing to you in that he was there anyway, but she made sure that he was involved in every single serious meeting, even though he wasn't even in the US. He's over in the UK. She would Skype him in and bring him in. And I think your point is so important. And it's not even just, it's really specific for women, but actually it's for everyone. I think what Jenny's saying here, which is so refreshing to hear and to talk about in the podcast, is that this is not a fair world. You are not walking into a meeting with your mom, your dad, your friend, your boss, somebody who's actually going to be looking at things on a if it's good, it's good, and if it's bad, it's bad. You're walking into a 90-degree unfair angle. And if you're there, you got to work out, what unfair advantage can I give myself to make sure that the disadvantage that's against me is neutralized? And for that, you got to understand the people you're going in to see, but you also have to have tools in your arsenal, right?
Exactly. Totally.
I like that. I really like that, Jenny.
Totally.
Hey, worst investment moment. Give us something, and it doesn't have to be you. It can be an entrepreneur you've seen. I want the women entrepreneurs, especially who are listening to this podcast, to take a lesson from something that you've seen before happen to an entrepreneur so that they can avoid it for themselves.
Well, I've invested quite a bit in startups, Wall Street. I trade stocks, commodities, currency. I'm currently in and out of crypto, Bitcoin. Um, all of these investments are very similar. What that means is if you're investing in crypto or Wall Street, if the market is going against you, I would advise against doubling down. Okay.
Where were you 20 years ago? 20 friggin' years ago. I am the worst. I am the worst. Never give me stocks or shares. Anyone. In my whole life, I've never made money. And every time it's going down, I think, oh, this is awesome. Because when it goes back up again, I'm going to be twice as rich.
Right.
No.
But the thing about doubling down or tripling down is you're literally digging a hole deeper for yourself. On Wall Street, if you're long equity, the only thing I would advise is to hold on to it. Quick story to that is I once purchased a stock. Actually, I'm gonna be very blunt here. It was $1 million trade. Okay,
Whoa.
I still have the statement and that whole thing to attest to that. I came in, actually it was $1.1 million because the stock was like $11 or something. I bought exactly 100,000 share. And then guess where that stock went? Went down to like less than 10 cents. So that adrenaline, so that's how I learned to be so disciplined, because of that very specific trade. I saw my $1.1 million literally went down to literally nothing. I stopped looking at the statement. This is a couple years back, 5 or 6 years back. I stopped looking at the statement when it went below $500,000. Then I noticed it dropped below 300,000, and then after that, I stopped looking, period. So then guess what was the conclusion with that trade? I left it there for 3 years, over 3 years plus. And then I start hearing it on CNBC that it was creeping back from 10 cents to 75 cents to $1 and then I start looking at it again. At the end, to make the whole story short, I exited after nearly 3.5 years later at $1.3 million. So I literally profited $250,000, but that was discipline. Now,
is that the lesson here for start? Is there a lesson here within startup that there's a discipline required when you're running your business, that we don't panic when everything is going really bad? Because it does, right? I mean, you, me, like a lot of people listen to this podcast and they hear like great investors and high up leaders, and even me when we're talking, and you think, oh, these guys have got it easy, but it's not true. Like all of us go through these terrifying moments of like a break fall, which you don't think it's going to stop. And the discipline is something we don't talk about a lot here, but to be able to hold, as long as there's true light at the end of the tunnel, is one of the signs of a great entrepreneur, maybe.
Exactly. The only difference between holding longing equity versus that of crypto or being a startup is that equity, depending on the company, it has assets, and literally you can bet on it that this company can never go down to zero. Because with stock, obviously, if a company goes to zero, you will lose everything.
Yeah.
So the reason why I hung on to my position was because I knew that company would never going to go down to zero. That's number one. What's the difference with that?
Because it had the fundamentals.
That is correct.
Right.
From that fundamental, you take that over to crypto. Crypto has nothing.
Zero.
So I wouldn't advise similar to crypto. Crypto, the only thing I will probably choose is Bitcoin. though there is no fundamental to Bitcoin, but since it is the first one, it is most well known. Everybody has to buy Bitcoin in order to buy other coins. I'm sticking to that for now.
It's the best gamble.
It's the best
but
gamble.
It's still a gamble.
It's still a gamble, exactly. Now, in terms of startup, now that's a little bit tricky, only because with startup, every month there is an expense. See, when I was holding my $1 million trade,
it costs you nothing.
I have no expense. I had no expense.
Yeah.
But startups, when you hang on to it every month, as little as $1 or $2 or $5,000, that is an expense that you still have to put out, unless you are a one-man band. Okay, but even if you're a one-man band, if you have a tech company, you still got to pay the servers. You still got to pay at least one coder to detect bugs that the system's down, blah, blah, blah. So the thing about startup is that you always, always, always think at least 6 to 8 months in advance. You always budget yourself in that banking account, okay, that this money would last me at least 6 more months. Now, if you have that amount of money reserved in the bank account for about 6 more months, you better get your bleep, ASS, out there, okay, and start nailing down more checks, nailing down more checks. And if you can't, okay, and you've just lost 3 months out of that 6 months, now you only got 3 months left of budgeting inside that banking account of yours, you better start learning how to pivot.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to pivot, okay, to divert your business to another sector, combine it, to merge, or whatever it is, then I can guarantee you, and the word is guarantee, that you will shut down that business within the next 3 months. That's the difference between investing on Wall Street, crypto, and startups.
So we're going to say honest discipline.
Exactly.
Not just discipline. You got to be honest with yourself based on some knowledge, and then have a discipline to do what needs to be done.
That is correct. And you got to be on top of your game, because as a founder and CEO, regardless if you are a man or a woman, if you're not on top of your game, okay, then you're gonna lose.
Is that
game over?
Is that the most important skill? I mean, we look at a few things. We look at obviously the strategy that a startup has. We look at the implementation that a startups have. We look at the weapons that they have, which is their product or maybe their activities that tie into that product. If you were going to lay it out for a female entrepreneur, early stage startup, maybe she has a couple of 100,000 to get started. She's going to build an app. It's in a space where it's not absolute first mover, but she has advantage with some of the things that she's building into it. What skills does she need to have, and what advice would you give her?
Well, certainly you chose the right word. Certainly between, having the skill, the strategy plan, or, the weapons, which is the product. Of those three, I would always gonna advise or mentor the founder or CEO to have the skill, because the skill is different from knowledge. Knowledge is something that you've learned from books or whatever, but you've never really experienced it. The skill is knowledge plus real life experience. Okay, if you have the skill, you can certainly have the strategy, and you can certainly pivot your product if your product, let's just say, did not work within the first couple months or a couple of years. You couldn't raise funding. Without the skill, it would be tough.
But how can you tell if you have the skill?
Well, obviously, if a startup just came out, no experience, no other, when he or she was in college or whatever, he or she never had groups or created anything or been any kind of real life experience, you can certainly tell that founder lacks skill. That founder could have knowledge. Now, knowledge can turn into skills once that founder has, hands-on in terms of a project, launching a company. But when you have the skill, there's this thing that I mentor many startups, is that Steve Jobs, okay, he's probably the king of entrepreneur. Okay, everybody loves Steve Jobs. But the thing about Steve Jobs is he really wasn't an innovator.
Yeah.
But what he was he was the best salesman in the world.
Right.
Okay. So being a founder, being a CEO, okay, if you cannot sell ice to Eskimo,
You're in
then
trouble.
you're in
you
trouble.
better find somebody who can.
Exactly. You need to step down to seat number 2, which is the COO, and bring someone in to seat number 1, because being a part of the CEO, founder, successful, having your company to multi-billion dollar. I mean, we're talking about now, there are several articles talking about there's a first a trillion startup already. We're no longer in the B's. We're start talking about the T's now, okay? So without having that skill of salesmanship, okay, meaning how do you know how to sell? If you can sell ice to Eskimo, that is a success.
I like this. So we're moving into the battle plan now a little bit, where what a startup requires. Sales skills, I love this. If you don't have sales skills, you better have the most incredible technology that's ever been built, because people have to feel their why. They have to understand why your brand is going to be useful to them. So yes, sales skills. What other skills are required as a female CEO? And maybe let's put them into percentages. So if it's out of 100% at the beginning, I call it the Viking stage, right at the start, where the only thing you're doing is you're pillaging and you're hoping somebody doesn't chop off your head. That's the only objective of the early stage entrepreneur. So sales skills equates to going out, getting on your little barge, and then getting the hell over the seas and taking whatever chickens you can from another village. What else?
Well, I'm gonna go very basic, and then I'm gonna move up probably just 3 points. The very, very basic, which sounds very lame, but it's a fact. And with me, Brian, is I'm very blunt, straightforward,
all about the truth.
And all about the truth. When you're talking about sales, let's vision ourselves walking to a cars dealer. You see all these men, right? They look good, right? Even when you walk into a Merrill Lynch office or a Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs, those are investment bankers. What do you see? A lot of good-looking men in 2 to 3-piece suit. The same thing as those investment banker brokerage firms, all the way down to car salesmen. Looks are still the key being a part of sale.
Great point.
Okay? Now, I don't care what people say, but if you object me, then that means you're in a denial stage, because we're still in a world where looks is still a part of great salesmanship. Okay, you have to have your own uniqueness. You have to, so that's number one. Aside that, I mean, if you've been blessed, by God, that you can sell ice to Eskimo, and you have the look, you have the attraction, you're literally 85% there. The remainder 50% is basically how you carry yourself. If your pitch, or how you communicate with people, if you intimidate people, or if you're too aggressive, if you're too naive, everything that is too is just not good. You have to be right there, mediocre. When you walk into any meeting, I would advise the woman, okay? The first thing you gotta do is you use your eyes, your God-given sixth sense, to literally view all the men, because I know for sure you're going to be going in a room where there's all going to be men, okay? To see how they are, and you have to blend in, okay? Most of the time, I would advise, don't be too aggressive, but be assertive, okay? Meaning that you have to stand ground on certain things that you believe. Because sometimes in a room meeting like that, the men are going to test that woman to see, he may give her some ideas or whatever it is. And if every ideas that those men give you, and you say, oh, that's great, I'll change mine, let's go to that, then that's a form of weakness. Okay? So, but if every ideas that those men give you, and you say, no, I don't like that, I'm going to stick to mine, then that means that you're not ignorant, but egotistical, and it would be hard for them, difficult to work with you. Okay. So therefore, like I was saying, you have to blend in. You have to be smart. You need to use your intuition, okay, in terms of staying your ground, but around 50 to 60%, especially when you raise funding.
Yes.
Because when you're raising funding, you have to keep in mind these men who are writing you that check, they have to envision you that they're going to be working with you.
Yeah.
If they feel like that you intimidate them or you're too shy or you're not a goal-getter, you're not hustler, again, too much or too little, you're going to walk out with nothing.
It's great advice. I absolutely love
Mm-hmm.
it. I love it because it's about being able to control the conversation. It's funny. I'm going to be having a podcast with Oren, who wrote a book called Pitch Anything. And Pitch Anything is exactly on this line. It's how to be assertive and how to actually own your space with these people because they'll run over you otherwise. Okay, quick fire round. Reaching into your mind. Biggest success ever. No family. No, I love my mom. No. Biggest success ever.
Well, my biggest success was my first company, which
Yeah, right.
was
You
my
rocked it. Like,
my broker
what?
dealer, which is when you Google about me, it still talk about that. Again, I from the ground up.
Yeah, you took it
Nothing.
from nothing. You
Nothing.
built it from
Exactly.
nothing. Like, kudos. That's why, like, we've been friends since I first came here.
Right.
Because I don't respect women. I don't respect men. I don't respect black men or Indian men or Irish men. I respect great people. Like people who use their circumstance or use their lack of circumstance, like me or you or anybody else, in a particular area to grow to be the top of that area. Because
Exactly.
that's the true measurement of greatness.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, best advice you've ever received?
Stick to your game. You know, you will only fail if if you give up. But even if you fail, that is still a lesson. If once you fail, you need to learn to stand back up. Okay, so I knock on wood, but I've been thankful 2 out of 2. I'm on my third and my fourth companies right now. The ladder, is much higher to climb.
Yeah.
Tougher than my first 2 companies. We're in an environment again where female are not being helped as much. So you're kind of like going solo most of the time. But other than that, stick to your game. Stick to what you believe. Stand your ground. And you always have to have plan B, plan C every 6 months or so.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, you got to pivot.
And I love listening to you, Jenny, because it's not about, if you're a man listening or a woman listening or anything else, it's not about, is it women, is it men? It's just about that if there are not really strong role models supporting early stage female startups, then the numbers will just get worse. And then the fewer great startups that we have out there, the more anyone's going to lose. So the world is a better place for having a great mentor like you for women startups. Entrepreneur you admire?
There are so many men out there, but again, since I empower women, there are not that many women out there. I love Sheryl Sandberg, but she's really not an entrepreneur. Well, she is, but she isn't. She's more well known because being the COO of Facebook. But in terms of true entrepreneurs, of course, everybody loves Oprah. She is that true key. I would say the second one I would like, of course, is the wealthiest self-made woman, and it's not Kylie Jenner. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
I heard
I was
about
wondering
that
when she was
recently.
going to come up.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But it's the co-founder of Little Caesar. She
Yeah.
co-founded with her husband, who is now deceased. I believe he passed away last year. But I believe that it wasn't for her involved in it. She's a co-founder. Little Caesar would not be where it is today. So she is, I forgot her name, but her name is quite difficult to pronounce anyway.
Yeah.
But you guys can Google that.
She built a real business from the ground and built it
exactly.
up. It's amazing.
I believe she's about 5.2 billionaire right now.
Good for her.
Good-
Hey, listen,
good
and
for
then
her.
and then the last question to finish it out: what industries do you see as being really big over the next 2 to 3 years, and specifically, what type of industries are you looking to invest in for best returns?
Well, certainly I have always been in tech and the finance. Those
Yeah.
are literally my core, But I would say within the next couple years, I'm going to stick with crypto.
Whoa.
Okay. Now that's going to be a shocking because again, in almost every single one of my speaking, I travel to speak. I tend to be downplay Bitcoin. You know, I'm still waiting for Bitcoin at $5,000 because why? Because that's where I'm supposed to come in with my farm. But I believe within the next couple years, we will see, you know, crypto, blockchain. Of course, that's a different thing, but I'm specifically talking about cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Is going to explode.
Okay, I got that. And listen, for all those women entrepreneurs out there who want to contact you, can you give us your contact details so we can get them?
Certainly, I am on Twitter. I do have my direct messages, so you're welcome to direct message me there. That's kind of like texting, you know, because I'm on there all the time. Or you can send my team an email at info at vcnetwork.co. VC is venture capital, network is networking. .co, not a .com, and you can certainly send me an email there.
Jenny, it's always a pleasure. You're a great friend of mine. We're going to keep on doing great things in the future. You're an incredible role model, like I said, to women entrepreneurs everywhere. Thanks for being a great partner in the Silicon Beach tech scene.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. Again, greatly appreciated. I mean, I adore you. I love what you do here. Anytime Brian calls me to Dojo, I'm like, push things out of the way.
Even through 6 hours of traffic.
There you go. Thank you, Brian. Greatly appreciated.
Thanks for joining us. If you know any other entrepreneur equally ambitious as you, then share this podcast by paying it forward to other entrepreneurs who are building your own army. Now, as always, our website, expertdojo.com, is packed with information to help you grow your business, find investment, and train for victory. We also walk our talk and invest in startups every year in our accelerator here in Silicon Beach. You can always reach out to me at brian@expertdojo.com, and I look forward to being back here again at our regular time next Tuesday, 10 a.m. with another of the world's top investors, helping you win the war against startup failure.